Welcome. Today we're going to be discussing piercing lance, its execution, some things you should know about its execution, some problems that could arise, and how to compensate or fix for those issues. So let's talk through the ideal phase of this technique. This technique is you are in a ready position. Keep in mind we have ready and non-ready positions, and we have techniques that deal with both of them. This one is pretty much exclusively from a ready position. So what happens is the person says hands up or whatever, your hands are up, for whatever reason your hands are up. One of the things that you want to think about is that we're dealing with a knife here, and we always want to, when dealing with some sort of knives or any situation where it begins to become violent, is we want to try and de-escalate the situation. So keep in mind there's one of two reasons why we have to engage this opponent. One is we've decided we're not going to engage and give them whatever they're asking for, but either A, they get to a point where they're asking for something we cannot give up, like our child or our wife or something like that. So we decide and make that conscious decision that we have to engage this person, or B, we give our hands up, we're going to engage, but this person decides they're going to do this anyway. So we either have to or must do it. We are forced into this situation. So keep that in mind. Most of the time what you want to try and do is de-escalate and give up whatever you want to do, but this is a situation where, for whatever reason, you had to engage this opponent. In this case, they just decided to stab you. So they said hands up, you bring your hands up, and they go to stab you, and now you're stuck and you have to do something. So if you notice, the way I'm bringing my hands up is a very specific way, because now we're starting to get into rules and principles of dealing with weapons, in this case a knife or a lance, as we like to refer to it in Kenpo. So in this case, if you notice, my hands are facing me, not away from me. Why? Because if I do this and the person decides to cut me, this is a much more vital and deadly cut to the inside of our wrist rather than to the back of our wrist. So if they do actually have to cut us this way, they're going to get mostly musculature and bones, which is still bad, but not as vital. So keep that in mind. And when we're dealing with weapons, and specifically with knives, you want to expose the backs rather than the front of your hands. So our hands are up, the person starts to come at us, and we want to step away. Notice what we're doing, we're trying to create distance. The problem is here is that my hands are here and I'm trying to work like a Kenpoist and I'm staying real close, but what's the problem here? I'm still close and I'm exposing my vital targets to that weapon. So what we want to do is we want to do the opposite concept. Rather than keeping our hands anchored and close to our body, what we want to do is we want to walk away. That's what we call it, walk away from your hand. So how does that work? I want to try and keep that weapon as way as I can. If you notice, I'm actually actively meeting the weapon. I'm not trying to parry it and get it off to the side. What I want to do is obey the 4 steps. Divert, control, seize, counter, or divert, seize, control, counter. So in this case, divert is 1. So I want to divert that out of the way as fast as possible. So I'm moving this hand out of the way just so you can see it. So I don't want to try and lean, which would then expose that, and I don't want to be too close because it exposes everything, right? So face would be from leaning, and we're giving up our lever, and back up straight and far away is where we want to be, not too close, okay? I know I'm reiterating, but it's extremely important that you do that. Now, next thing is seize and control. Those are 2 very similar concepts. Let's talk about how I'm going to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the inside here, but if I just do this, he's going to go to the weakest part of that grab. So how do I solve for that problem? What I can do is I can bring it to my body, but notice what's happening here. I don't have my elbow in the proper position, so he can do what's called a pass line. He can pull out. So we've controlled for depth and height, but we haven't controlled for, or width and height, but haven't controlled for depth. So what we want to make sure we want to do is pin this as much as we can against us, because now if they try and do that pass line, they can't get it. Notice what's happening with my hand here. If I do not grab, he can then slip out because we haven't controlled the depth. So what we're doing is we're taking advantage of the fact that same way handcuffs work is I want to use that hand to fully control that depth situation, but I also want to keep it as close as I can to me. So now, let's move on from here. So what I'm going to do is that now that we've done the divert, control, seize, now we want to do the counter. So let's do 180 here so you can see what's happening here. So I've gotten to this position, so what I want to do is I'm going to shoot this elbow back and hit this opponent. Why? Because I want to get them to arch their back. So from here, I'm going to go whack, hit this as hard as I can because I want them to start arching them because this is the direction I want them to go. So the next thing happens is once I hit this, I want to step out and do a 45 to them. I do not want to step back out to do 180 and try and do a hit. Why? Because now I've given up this control again. So by doing a 90 degree, what I can do is I can continue this third handing, let's spin around so you can see it this way. So from a 90 degree, if you notice, I can continue to keep this pressed here, and then I can use the depth, or the width in this case, in order to control them that way. So what I want to do is make sure I continue to keep this. So when I come from here, I'm going to do this hit, do that 90 degree, not 180 degree to them. I want to be perpendicular when we're facing the camera, and I do the hit. So if you notice what's happening, I'm doing the hit to the side, but then I begin to loop it back a little bit. But here's the problem. Let's turn this way. I don't want to get them to bend that way, because then they're coming at me. What I want to do is I want to take them to the floor vertically. So how does that work? What I want to do is I want to take the hand from the heel palm, turn it into the shape of the crane, and drop my elbow. I don't want to be pulling with the elbow horizontally or even diagonally. I want to take it straight to the floor. So the way that works is I do this hit and I drop straight down. Okay, so notice what's happening here on the elbow. I'm purposely not breaking the elbow. What I would normally do is take that elbow as it's coming down and break it across my upper part of my leg. But in this case, to be nice, you'll notice we do this throughout our techniques quite a bit. We're being nice to the opponent, and I'll continue to be nice with the next maneuver too. So now I've taken them to the floor, and now I want to continue forward with this technique. So if I did actually break this elbow, things change quite a bit than if I don't break the elbow. So for instance, there's a lot of parts of this technique where it's showing you how to break the elbow in a variety of different ways. If you did it in the first one, it's not needed throughout the rest of the technique, but this technique is showing you that there are different options, and if you don't get the break like we did in this case, that you can use it later in the technique. So now let's continue forward. What I want to do is I'm going to take this knife and stab him with it, but if I just bring my left hand up, begin to stab him, A, he can fight against me, and B, he can always just move that onto the different hand. Why? Because I haven't controlled that in any way. So what I want to think, once I've gotten into this position, I want to counter grab that and move my hand to where I'm grabbing him the same way as if I would grab the knife, so that I can continue to control it. Now notice that I'm grabbing it slightly lower than he is, so that I can then turn this into a push as we go forward. So now, we've done all this and we want to get him to stab himself. So I get my alignments, I'm ready to go, but now he's fighting me, right? So how do I solve for this problem? The way we solve for this problem is with this knee. What I want to do is drop this knee into him, and notice what's happened. He begins to loosen that hand, and now at this point I can slam that knife into him. So it's not just the press, because he can always bring up the other hand too, but even then, if I drop this knee in, I can continue to do that press. So the knee is vital in making this technique work. So now we get this into his throat, again being nice, we're missing the throat. We then want to continue forward with the technique. So what I do is I do what's called a barber pole grab. If you'll notice from this situation, what we normally do is we do grabs like this to keep that closed circle. We call it a barber pole grab. This is the vertical version of it. What we're going to do now is we're going to do the horizontal version of it, which then exposes the elbow, but now we're going to break the shoulder instead of the elbow, so we do that break. Then we do the barber pole version grab again, do the break this way. So the way that works is you're turning the hand to expose the elbow and do the break this way. Assuming again we didn't do that break, we now have another option. We can do it with the knee. So Kenpo has an idea of economy of motion. We don't want to just pick our foot up and kick, so we want to use it as we're going forward. So we do the knee and then do the kick. So this is done like a side kick, mostly with the heel, not with the blade. So think of it almost as a downward diagonal heel kick rather than a side kick. Even though it's done as a side kick, the blade is not the primary. What you want to do is think of a heel palm going behind the jaw. That's the same thing with your heel. So you're going to do a push and pull, then we're going to do a sweep, and at this point you have yet another option. I can just do a sweep and cross out, or I can do a sweep and stomp, obeying that principle or concept of keeping the weapon under check just in case they happen to have it still, and then cross out and cover. Okay, up. Let's take it from this line. We'll do a quick walkthrough one more time. We're starting from a ready position. Make sure we're exposing the back of our hands. Walk away, grab, pull it close to you, make sure your elbow tight, do that hit. Go at that 90 or 90 degree or perpendicular angle to them. Continue with the hit, making sure your third hand, this arm directly to your body. So you're going to hit across and drop straight down to get to that break. Re-grab, Drop the knee, press into the throat. Grab with that counter barber pole grab, break the elbow, barber pole grab again, expose the elbow, break. If that didn't work, knee, side kick, sweep with a stomp, optional, cross out and cover. Okay, so let's do that one more time, this time without any explanation and to a new angle. Up. Hope this video helps you. Thank you very much.